15-year-old Maya Chen was just playing flight simulator games when both pilots collapsed at 28,000 feet. With 150 passengers panicking and fuel running low, the adults dismissed her as just a kid. But Maya's dead pilot father had taught her one thing: heroes aren't born, they're made in crisis. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. Maya Chen sat in the airport waiting area, her fingers moving quickly on her phone screen. She was playing a flight simulator game trying to land a plane in bad weather. At 15, Maya loved everything about airplanes. Her father had been a pilot before he died 2 years ago, and he had taught her many things about flying. Maya Chen? A flight attendant with a bright smile walked over to her. "I'm Jessica. I'll be taking care of you on today's flight to Seattle." Maya looked up from her phone. "Hi. My aunt is picking me up there." Jessica noticed the flight simulator on Maya's phone. "That's a cute game. My little brother plays those too." Maya wanted to say it wasn't just a game for her, but she stayed quiet. Adults always thought her love of flying was just a childish hobby. They didn't know she had spent hundreds of hours learning about aircraft systems, weather patterns, and emergency procedures. The boarding call came and Jessica helped Maya get on the plane. It was a Boeing 737 with 150 passengers. Maya got a window seat in row 12. She looked out at the wing and engines, remembering what her father had taught her about how planes work. "Can I get you anything, sweetie?" Jessica asked after takeoff. "Just some water, please," Maya said. She was reading an aviation magazine she had bought at the airport. The flight was going well. They were flying at 28,000 feet and the sky was clear. Maya could see the Rocky Mountains below. She was thinking about her summer at aviation camp, where she had learned to use real flight instruments in a training plane. In the cockpit, Captain Rodriguez and First Officer Thompson were eating their lunch. The airline provided crew meals and today it was chicken with rice. They didn't know that the food had been sitting too long in the hot airport kitchen. About an hour into the flight, Captain Rodriguez started feeling sick. His stomach hurt and he felt dizzy. "Dave, I'm not feeling well," he told his co-pilot. "Me neither," Thompson replied, holding his head. "Must be something we ate." Within minutes, both pilots were very sick. Captain Rodriguez tried to call the flight attendants, but he collapsed in his seat. Thompson fell forward onto the controls before passing out completely. The plane continued flying on autopilot, but nobody was watching the instruments anymore. Jessica was serving drinks in the back when she heard a passenger call for help. She rushed to the cockpit and found both pilots unconscious. "Oh my God," she screamed. Her scream made other passengers look up. Soon everyone knew something was wrong. People started panicking when they realized the pilots were down. "Is there a doctor on board?" Jessica announced over the intercom. Dr. Martinez, a heart doctor, came forward. He checked both pilots and shook his head. "They're alive but completely unconscious. Looks like severe food poisoning. They won't wake up for hours." The panic in the cabin got worse. People were crying and praying. Some were calling their families on their phones. "We need to find someone who can fly this plane," shouted a businessman in first class. Jessica looked around desperately. "Does anyone have any flying experience?" An older man raised his hand. "I flew small planes 20 years ago but nothing like this." "That's better than nothing," Jessica said. But when the man got to the cockpit, he stared at all the complex computers and screens. "I can't do this. This is completely different from what I know." Maya heard everything from her seat. She unbuckled her seatbelt and walked toward the front of the plane. "Excuse me," she said to Jessica. "I might be able to help." Jessica looked at her with surprise. "Maya, honey, go back to your seat. The adults will figure this out." "But I know about flying," Maya said. "My father was a pilot. He taught me a lot." A passenger laughed nervously. "We're not letting a kid fly the plane." "She's just 15, another passenger said. "This is crazy." Maya felt her face getting hot, but she tried to stay calm. "Please just let me look at the cockpit. I've studied these systems." Jessica didn't want to listen, but Dr. Martinez put his hand on her shoulder. "What choice do we have?" "Let her try." Maya stepped into the cockpit and looked at the instrument panel. Her heart was beating fast, but she recognized many of the displays. The autopilot was still on, keeping them flying straight and level. She checked the fuel gauges. They had about 2 hours of fuel left. The weather radar showed storms ahead. She looked at the flight management computer and saw they were still flying toward Seattle, but they would run out of fuel before getting there. "The autopilot is working," Maya announced to everyone. "But we have problems. Low fuel and bad weather ahead." "How do you know that?" asked a passenger. I spent 3 summers at aviation camp. I've flown in real planes with instructors. I know how to read these instruments. Jessica got on the radio to air traffic control. Denver Center, this is Flight 447. We have an emergency. Both pilots are unconscious and we need help. The air traffic controller was shocked. Flight 447, say again? Both pilots are down. We have a 15-year-old girl who says she can help, but we need to get this plane on the ground now. At the Denver Control Center, Supervisor Mike Johnson took over the radio. He had 30 years of experience and had handled many emergencies, but never anything like this. Flight 447, what is your fuel status? He asked. Maya took the microphone. We have about 1 hour and 40 minutes of fuel remaining. There are storms between us and Seattle. We need to find a closer airport. Mike was surprised by how professional Maya sounded. Who am I speaking with? My name is Maya Chen. My father was Captain James Chen with United Airlines. He taught me to fly before he died. Mike knew that name. James Chen had been a respected pilot who died in a car accident. If this was his daughter, maybe she really did know something about flying. Maya, I'm going to help you. First, we need to find the nearest suitable airport. Can you read the navigation display? Maya studied the screen. Yes, sir. I can see Denver is about 200 miles behind us. There's Grand Junction about 150 miles to the south. Good. We're going to guide you to Grand Junction. It has a long runway and emergency services. Can you turn off the autopilot? Maya's hands were shaking now. Turning off the autopilot meant she would be actually flying the plane. She had never flown anything bigger than a small training aircraft. I think so, she said. In the cabin, passengers were listening to every word. Some were still panicking, but others were starting to believe that Maya might be their only hope. An older woman named Mrs. Patterson came forward. Dear, I'm a retired teacher. What can I do to help you? Can you help keep everyone calm? Maya asked. I need to concentrate. Mrs. Patterson nodded and went back to talk to the other passengers. Maya took a deep breath and switched off the autopilot. The plane immediately felt different. She had to hold the control wheel steady to keep them flying level. I have control, she announced, using the proper pilot phrase her father had taught her. Mike guided her through turning toward Grand Junction. Maya, turn right heading 180 degrees. Do this very slowly and gently. Maya turned the wheel slightly to the right. The plane began to turn, and she felt the weight of 150 lives in her hands. Good, Mike said. You're doing great. Now we need to start descending. See the altitude selector on the autopilot panel. Yes, sir. It's set to 28,000 feet. Turn it down to 20,000 and then push the vertical speed button. Maya did as instructed. The plane started descending slowly. She was getting more confident, but she knew the hardest part was still coming, the landing. As they flew toward Grand Junction, Maya had to deal with more than just flying the plane. Some passengers were still afraid to trust a teenager with their lives. A man in a business suit stood up and shouted, "This is insane. We need to find a real pilot." Sit down, Mrs. Patterson told him firmly. She's our only chance. Dr. Martinez checked on the pilots again. They were still unconscious and wouldn't wake up for hours. Maya kept talking to Mike on the radio. He was explaining how the plane systems worked and helping her prepare for landing. She was learning things she had never practiced before, even in the most advanced simulators. Maya, you're going to need to configure the plane for landing, Mike said. That means extending the landing gear and flaps. Have you ever done this? Only in simulators, Maya admitted. But I know where the controls are. The weather was getting worse as they got closer to Grand Junction. Rain was starting and the wind was picking up. Maya, the weather at Grand Junction is getting bad, Mike reported. Winds are gusting to 30 knots. Do you think you can handle a crosswind landing? Maya's father had taught her about crosswind landings, but she had only practiced them in small planes. This was much different. I'll try my best, she said. Jessica came into the cockpit. Maya, how are you doing? Scared, Maya admitted. But I won't give up. The passengers are starting to believe in you, Jessica said. Mrs. Patterson has been telling everyone about your father and your training. As they got closer to Grand Junction, Maya could see the airport through the windscreen. The runway looked so small from up high. Maya, you're lined up perfectly with the runway, Mike said. Start reducing power and extend the flaps to 15 degrees. Maya found the flap lever and moved it. She could feel the plane slowing down as the flaps created more drag. Now extend the landing gear, Mike instructed. Maya found the gear lever and pulled it down. She heard and felt the landing gear extending below the plane. In the cabin, passengers could see the ground getting closer. Some were crying, some were praying, and some were watching Maya with amazement. The wind was pushing the plane around as they got lower. Maya had to constantly adjust the controls to stay lined up with the runway. "You're doing great, Maya," Mike said. "Flaps to 30 degrees now." Maya moved the flaps again. The plane felt heavy and was descending faster. "I can see the runway," she announced. "Good. Keep your speed at 140 knots. When you cross the runway threshold, slowly pull back on the controls and reduce power." Maya's hands were sweating as she gripped the control wheel. The runway was getting bigger and bigger in the windscreen. The plane was being pushed sideways by the crosswind. Maya had to point the nose slightly into the wind to stay lined up with the centerline of the runway. "Almost there," Mike said. "Looking perfect." Maya crossed over the runway threshold. She pulled back gently on the controls and reduced the power. The plane settled toward the runway. The touchdown was harder than she wanted, but the plane was down safely. Maya pushed on the brakes and the plane began to slow down. "We're down. We're safe," she shouted into the microphone. In the cabin, passengers erupted in cheers and applause. People were hugging each other and crying with relief. Emergency vehicles were waiting for them as Maya taxied the plane to the terminal. Paramedics came aboard to treat the pilots, who were still unconscious but stable. When Maya finally stood up from the pilot's seat, her legs were shaking. Jessica gave her a big hug. "You saved all of us," Jessica said with tears in her eyes. Mrs. Patterson came forward and hugged Maya too. "Your father would be so proud of you." The businessman who had doubted Maya earlier came up to her. "I'm sorry I didn't believe in you. You're a hero." As the passengers got off the plane, many of them stopped to thank Maya and shake her hand. Some asked for her autograph. Later, at the airport, Maya called her Aunt Sarah to explain why she wouldn't be arriving in Seattle that day. Then she called her mother. "Mom, I'm okay, but something happened on the plane," Maya said. When she explained what had occurred, her mother was shocked and proud at the same time. "Your father always said you had a natural talent for flying," her mother said through her tears. The next day, Maya's story was on news channels around the world. She was interviewed by reporters who wanted to know how a 15-year-old girl had saved 150 people. "I was scared," Maya told them. "But my father taught me to never give up. He always said that courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about doing what's right even when you are afraid." The airline company thanked Maya and offered her a full scholarship to any aviation college she wanted to attend. The pilots recovered completely and personally thanked her for saving their lives and the lives of all the passengers. Captain Rodriguez shook Maya's hand and said, "You're already a better pilot than many people I know. Your father would be incredibly proud." Maya went back to school as a hero, but she remained humble about what she had done. She continued studying aviation and practicing on flight simulators, knowing that one day she would become a professional pilot like her father. Years later, when Captain Maya Chen was flying her own commercial flights, she would tell her passengers that heroes can come from anywhere at any age. Sometimes the smallest person can make the biggest difference, and courage combined with knowledge can overcome any challenge. The incident taught everyone on board that day an important lesson. Never underestimate what someone can do based on their age or appearance. Maya proved that determination, training, and courage are more important than experience when lives are on the line. Her father had always told her that flying was about more than just operating machines. It was about taking responsibility for others and never giving up when people need you. On that day at 28,000 feet, Maya Chen showed the world what it truly means to have wings of courage. The plane she landed that day was later named Maya's Wings by the airline company, and it continues to fly safely around the world, carrying passengers who trust in the skill and bravery of pilots like the 15-year-old girl who once saved them all.